Okay, so welcome everybody to the Using Your Voice Creatively workshop. Very, very honoured to have been asked to deliver this to you. I am full of ideas all the time, and this will become very apparent as we move through the slides, because I thought I need at least 6 weeks to talk about all the things, you know, when you've got so much. But we'll do what we can today. So I'm Annika. I'm an award-winning author. Actually, after this conversation that I'm having with you here, I'm having a book launch online on Zoom as well. It's a busy night. I've written my memoir, which I think is either my 6th or my 7th book. I'm a creative mentor, so again, I'm full of ideas, and lots of people also full of ideas but just not knowing direction tend to come to me for a bit of one-to-one support. I'm a director of a company called Awesome, and it's spelt deliberately that way. It means words in Latin, but I focus on brand and business communications, which can look anything like creating really epic content for social media, delivering training on how to use it. I've even got like a little product that I'll talk to you about a bit later. So lots of different ways to be creative. And I'm a mum to 2 little girls who are somewhere in the background being quiet. So if at some point you see a little head bobbing, that might be a child passing me a note asking for biscuits. So yeah, this is pretty much me in a nutshell. So I want to make this a really good experience for everybody. So there are a little bit, I won't say rules, let's say guidelines, so that we can get the most out of this experience. Because ultimately, you know, the slides are pretty, they're nice. But I'm not really going to be reading from them. It's the more as a guide. I really want to speak with and connect with you. And so that's what they're there for. So definitely take notes where you can if you've got pen and paper. It's not for everybody, but some people prefer to process their learning in that way. So totally take notes. Mics are on mute, but there will be an opportunity at the end where we can all have a real conversation, and you'll have opportunities there to ask questions and get involved. Definitely get involved. There's lots of tasks here. I say lots of tasks. There's about 5 tasks, and I would really love to see your inputs. Every voice here is valuable, but also as much as you're here to learn from me, I'm also learning from you, because it's just fascinating to see what we're all working on, and what you find useful as well. And just enjoy it. Just have fun. There's no expectations. There's no tests at the end. Okay, there's no you know, you don't get kicked out if you say the wrong answer. There are no wrong answers. So really, when I talk about using your voice and what I really want to talk about is, what is it that you want to say? So, you know, is anybody here a blogger or interested in blogging or writing books or just working with people, building up their confidence? I know that a good few years ago, I'd started a mums group at my daughter's school. I just wanted to bring other women who were forward thinking together. So it could even be something like that. And what I'd like you to think about is, how do you introduce yourself? Like, how do you do it? Do you say, my name's Farida and I'm a centre manager? Or do you say, you know, I'm a mum of 3? Or do you say, I'm really passionate about coding and teaching young girls to code so they have the skills? How do you introduce themselves? And this might change with time. So I know that I've been an author for 7 years, about 7 years, yeah. And when I first used to introduce myself with my first book, it was almost like apologetic. It was almost like, my name's Annika and I'm an author. Like, you're asking the question. Does anybody like feel like you've got that imposter syndrome? Like you've got this title now, or you've got this role or this task. And it's almost like, does this really belong to me? Someone's going to find me out. I'm a total fraud. And it took a few years to find the confidence to really say it and own it. And also, this is tied in with, what is it that you want people to know about you? What do you want people to know? So for me, I have a very I have a personal brand. Ultimately, it was easy for Farida to find me. I'm on absolutely everything. It's shameful and shameless. And you know, there are people that I would meet and they say, oh, I feel like I know you, you know, I follow you here, there and everywhere, but actually there's only a small percentage of my life that goes online. and that's because I curate the content. I decide what I want people to know about me, about my life, my personal experiences, or whatever. So sometimes it's really worth thinking about, okay, how do you introduce yourself, and how do you pair that with what do I want people to know about me? So if there was anybody here who was really interested in, they did a yoga course, and they were interested in putting on some workshops around yoga or teaching yoga classes, how would you introduce yourself, whether it's onto the internet or speaking with potential class attendees? How would you say it? And so to really get you to connect with this, I want you to really think about, if your voice, whatever that is, was a human person, was a person sat here right now talking to you, what does that person look like, and how do they present? Farida's got this really cool feature on here where she's going to break you out into smaller groups, so that perhaps this is something that you can discuss with each other. And we'll do that for about 5 minutes and come back and see what you came up with.
Brilliant. And I'm going to pause recording now.
Yeah, brilliant. Okay, fabulous. So now that we've kind of really understood our voice, or begun the process of really understanding what does our voice look like in human form, if this was a person, what do they look like, how do they represent? It's really worth then asking the question, who does your voice speak to? Another way of asking this is, who do you want to connect with? Because we are not for everybody. I'm not for everybody, you're not for everybody, but we are for some people. There are some people out there that would really listen to this voice. And so it's also worth thinking, because I think often there's two different types of audiences as well. There's like who we're already connecting with and who we'd really like to connect with. And it's not always the same. Sometimes it's a journey as moving through who you're already in contact with and who you'd like to reach. So if you were running, I don't know, like a mothers and baby group, and you was only connecting with older women, that's not your audience, but you're connecting with them. You really want to connect with new mothers. And so it's really worth thinking, whatever it is that you're focusing on right now, are you connecting with the people that you want to be? And so, for example, when we think about our main message, because I used to get really confused over this, because I thought, I want to help people write a book, or I want to teach people how to write, or I want to do workshops and stuff. But actually, when it comes down to the core of what I do, the core of what I do is really to help women own and find and own their voice. And so when I pin it down like that, that's the impact that I want to have. It doesn't really matter what I do around it, as long as that's at the core of it. So what I'd like you to think about is, in the work that you do, or the things that you'd like to achieve in life, what is your main message? What is the main message of the voice? If there was one thing they want people to know, what is that? Should we talk about that, or do you want a few minutes just to write it down? Actually, is anybody, and this is quite interesting actually, because this touched upon a conversation I've just had in one of the breakout rooms, but how do I say this? Everything perfect, to have to know how to do all the things. You really don't. You just need to know how to get started. Sometimes it's that first step that makes the biggest difference. And in terms of, creating content or building your brand so you can reach your audience, there's so many ways to do it. There are some people that are on absolutely everything. They're on Twitter and LinkedIn, on all social medias, on the TV and the papers, on the radio. They're on everything. I feel tired. But you don't have to be on all those things. So it really is about thinking about what's best use of your time and your energy. Okay, so social media is a great place to be, because everybody's on it first thing in the morning. That's what they're reaching for. Even if you don't like it, there's a good chance your target audience are probably on there. So it's not a bad place to start to get on there. And also, live videos are fun, but very scary at first. And I don't know if anybody here has ever, I know at first I used to be really reluctant just to send voice notes to a friend, because I didn't like how I sounded on the voice notes. So it's a process, and eventually the way that you feel about how you sound and how you look will be overshadowed by your desire to reach the people, to live in your purpose, to put your message out there. And it's with practice. And honestly, if you were to ever, and you can probably find them, my really, really old videos, I look like I don't know what I'm doing, but I committed. And it's with time we get better. So really don't put pressure on yourself to be like, to arrive onto Instagram and have 10k followers in 2 weeks and have all, no. Okay, we don't need to show up and be perfect, we just need to show up. But there's also so many different ways of getting out there. So there are podcast interviews, and there are a lot of people who are starting podcasts that are looking for guests, and they're just really excited just to have somebody who wants to be on there. Speaking at events. The very first event I spoke at was a good 11 years ago. I was heavily pregnant with my firstborn. I'd done a march. I'd gone to a march in London called Million Women Rise. Some of you might have heard of it. And I was asked to speak at the rally. And I'd done this march, heavily pregnant, absolutely exhausted by the end of it, and then just spoke at the end at the rally like this. I was so scared. But it was powerful, and it was the first time I'd said my words out loud like that. And then and since then it's been lots of little and large things, and it comes with experience. And again, there are lots of people who, especially now, because most people have been at home thinking about what they really want to do. Now is a good time to start saying to people, I see the event that you're putting on, could I speak at that? Just ask, because now is a really good time to start chasing those opportunities. Don't just wait for them to come and find you. Be bold and ask, because the worst they can say is no, and you're not going to die because they said no. You're going to live another day. So nothing to lose. And again, with blogging, as Farida mentioned earlier, I hadn't asked her, how did you find me? I asked her today, and she basically said she found me online. She did some research and she found me. So me just having a blog there, it doesn't mean it's massively amazing. It is amazing, please read it. Doesn't mean it's massively amazing, but it meant that I was visible. It meant that I was visible, and she was able to contact me because of what she saw there. She decided, actually, this resonates, this is what I'm looking for. Some people decide to write a book, and that's how they get their voice out there. It's different for everybody. There's so many ways that you can get your voice out there. You don't have to do everything at once. You don't have to do everything at all. You might decide that you're going to start a podcast. You're going to download the Anchor FM app. It's free. And you're going to start recording a podcast, and that's what you're dedicated to. That's what you want to do. That's your thing. That's fine. You don't have to do what everybody else is doing, okay? You can totally find what works for you. You can also be really experimental as well. So I've been on everything. I say this, I'm quite obsessed with social media, and I'm very obsessed with creating and content and stuff. It's shameful. People are like, I want to do what you want to do. No, you don't. I'm obsessed. So, I used to really love being on Twitter, and I was very active over there. A couple of years ago, I had a networking hour called Help a Queen Out. It would be a Sunday hour, a bunch of women on there talking about different things. And I did that for a little while. I've got a YouTube channel that sometimes I post a video on there. It's not edited or anything, but it's, I'm always on Instagram. I've been on Snapchat, don't like it, not on there anymore. So I've tried different things and to see what really works for me, because what you've got to think about is exhausting sometimes, having to be switched on all the time, being in all these places. But ultimately, the people that you want to connect with aren't necessarily going to be in all these places. Some people really love LinkedIn. I'm not there yet. Some people really love LinkedIn, and that's their place. So it's okay to experiment and see, where can I connect with people? What feels really good for me? And obviously, once we're out of lockdown and the world looks sort of normal again, who knows? But then, don't underestimate the power of just going to a coffee morning, or going to a networking event, attending a course that might be offered, and just speaking to real people. That makes a difference as well. Okay, so when I say keeping the bigger picture in mind, so sometimes to help us stay focused, we need to have something that we're aiming for. So for a few years ago, for me, it was like, I really want to go to university. And then I had to look at, how am I going to get there? Because I'd left school, dropped out of sixth form. I wasn't going to university. And so lots of life stuff happened in the way. I always believed that I never would be able to go. But it was still a goal. And so what I want you to think about, you might have this goal and it might seem very, very impossible. Certainly when I really wanted to go to university, didn't think I'd get the chance. My mum died, I had to pay, had to work full time and all this stuff. Then I had children, and we know how it goes. And then when I was 27, I broke up with my then partner, and discovered that I can do some things. I didn't know I could do some of this stuff. Oh, this feels good. I'm going to finish writing this book. And then I started exploring possibilities. Okay, so the route to university wasn't quite how I planned it, but I did an access course, and then I went to university for 3 years. Single mum with 2 children, raging anxiety and depression. And I got my degree at the end of it. And so it's almost like you have your goal, but the way that you might get there might not be just, it might not just be in one direction. It might be a bit zigzag. So it's good to have that bigger goal in mind, whatever it is that you want to do. Sometimes we're just curious about what we can do. We don't have the bigger picture yet, and that's okay as well. So I know that for me, my goals are changing a lot lately because I'm always learning. Oh, I can do this. I might want to try this. So a task now, we won't break into the rooms just because I'm conscious of the time. What time are we on? Okay, I want to make sure we've got enough time for question time. But maybe this is something that you can write down in your notebook if you've got notes. And like, what are you trying to achieve? What is the bigger picture? What is the purpose of it? Don't feel like, what if people don't like it? What do you feel the purpose is of it? Why do you want to do it? Why do you feel like this is important? That's the main thing. We start there. Why is it important to you that you do this? So for me, my purpose, one of my main messages, one of the things I love to do is to help women find and own their voice. So that's important to me because I know what it feels like not to have one, and not to be heard, and not to feel like you can do something. So that's why it's important to me. So write that down, and hopefully that's something that you can work through. Outside of this, because I'm just talking too much. We've got a little bit of time. And then what I want you to do is using that bigger picture. So imagine the bigger picture is the goal. That is the goal. Okay. So it might be write a book. It might just be launch my very first event. It might be start a mum's group at the school. It could be anything. And use that as a long-term milestone. So you use that to plan backwards. This is how I do it. So think about what you personally want, especially in terms of places where you'd like to see your voice. Where do you see yourself at these points? Okay, where would you like to be in 1 week's time with this in mind? Where would you like to be in 1 month? And where would you like to be in a year? And when we think of it like that, it doesn't mean, so for anybody, if they wanted to write a book, you're not going to write a book in this next week. I mean, you probably could. There would be no sleep involved, But what would be progress? Progress might be that you've written 500 words this week in a week's time. In a month, you might have written 500 more, or 2,000. In a year, you might have written the whole thing. So what do your goals look like if we were looking at that? And I know that thinking about the ultimate goal might seem really scary at first, because I tell you now, all I ever wanted was to write a book and go to university. And I did them, and then I was like, whoo, they were really big goals when I was little. They were huge, and I did that, and then I was a bit shook. I was a bit like, I don't know what to ask the universe for next, because I'm going to get it and I'm scared. When you're about to step outside of your comfort zone, and you're just like, took a lot of confidence to get me here. So it can be scary at first. So, and your goals don't have to be massive. They can just be things that you'd really like to achieve. And ultimately, it's just good to know what you're aiming for, so that you're not wasting your time or your energy pursuing things that you don't really need to be closer to. It's going to be different for everybody. So you have to have the bigger picture. So let's talk about some practical ideas on how you can get there. So write down 3 things that you can do to make progress in 1 week, in 1 month, and 1 year. And make these really practical things. So for anybody who is writing a blog, It could, and you haven't started it yet. So maybe in a week's time, you'd have made notes and you would have explored it. What do I want my blog to be about? What kind of people do I want to read it? How often do I think I'm going to post? What am I going to call it? You could do that in a week. Maybe in a month, you could have signed up to WordPress, and you could have not bought a domain yet because you're just trying to figure out, do I even like doing this? I'm going to go for the free option. I would recommend that first. And you might have written your about me page, and you might have spent time on there because you might have thought, I'm going to make sure I'm still connecting with my voice on here. So think about what you want, the three physical steps that you could, not physical steps, 3 practical steps that you could take for each of those things, and it's going to be different for everybody. And that is ultimately your plan. It would be irresponsible for me to say, off you go and build your dreams, it's fine, you're ready to go, because we've got a plan now. But we need to be realistic, and we need to look at the barriers, because even with the best plans, sometimes we're going to feel like there's a wall here, we can't really progress. So, you know, even now I have a lot of negative self-talk. I was saying to myself, this is going to be terrible, there's so many people booked onto this workshop, what if it's awful? But I'm still here doing the thing. You know, so it doesn't matter how long you've been doing it, you're going to have that negative self-talk. I'm sure Oprah at times wakes up and feels like, really? So we're going to have that, but just because we have that little voice telling us that we're rubbish doesn't mean it's true. What it really is, it's that inner child. We're stepping into a scary situation, and our inner child is trying to protect us by saying, no, don't go there. And ultimately, just remind yourself, you know, we're not trying to be perfect at everything we're doing. Perfection is not the aim, because it's impossible. Even the Instagram models use Photoshop. It's impossible. We're just aiming for completion. So rather than saying to yourself, I'm going to write this book and it's going to be perfect the first time round, I'm never going to need to edit it. Don't do that. Don't put that pressure on yourself. Just say to yourself, I'm going to write the book. Completion. And be kind to yourself while you're learning. Again, like, I'm learning new stuff all the time, and I'm obsessed with this stuff. You're going to be learning all the time, and it's okay. Sometimes we're going to get things wrong. We're going to make mistakes, but it's in making the mistakes that we really figure out, oh, I've learned something new there. Because it's never a loss, it's always a lesson, and that's a gain. We're still winning. And just remember, even the experts start out as winners. So my favourite author is Dorothy Coomson. She's just, the way she writes is beautiful. She knows my name. That's my claim to fame. She knows my name. Given her a hug once. She's amazing. But, you know, the way she writes now is beautiful. She's been writing for a very long time, writing her books. And I imagine that her process now is very different to when she first started out, because she was a beginner. She was just getting started. And so just think of it like that. With whatever it is that you're focusing on, whether it's running events, coaching, putting on workshops, or writing a book or a blog, or anything that you want to be doing, you learn as you go. It's a process, and that's okay. And just remind yourself of your achievements. So I have this little negative Nancy that might sit on my shoulder here, and she'll say things like, oh, it's terrible, and then I can just go through and just check my testimonials. Let me see what some nice things people have said about me. This is proof that you're lying. So sometimes we have these negative thoughts. Combat it with facts, and fact is that someone somewhere said, I really like this. That's why you want to do what you want to do. And just always counteract it with stuff like, you know, for example, when I first launched Awesome, I was having all sorts of imposter syndrome, still do now. And my business coach said to me, but Annika, you do this as a proper job, because I work for a charity. You do this as a proper job. You're a communications officer. They pay you every month to do this job. So why don't you think you can have a business in it? And I was like, true. That's true, actually. So you counteract it with the facts. So take actions now. You know, you don't have to wait till Monday. Monday can be tomorrow if you believe in yourself. You can so do this. And remember, it's not about taking big steps all the time. Sometimes it's taking the small steps. Small steps are still progress. It's still forwards. It's not backwards. Progress is progress. Progress could be that you set up an Instagram page for your yoga class. You haven't posted anything on it, but you set it up. Progress, because you're somewhere now that you weren't last week, and we celebrate that. I can give you some ideas as well. So, you know, it's a case of if you want to write a book, maybe start writing a blog, get yourself into a regular writing routine, test your ideas out on an audience. If you want to have your own YouTube channel, try recording some videos on social media, on Instagram stories. Those stories last for 24 hours. So even if you do a terrible job of it, nobody's going to remember after a little bit, but you'll get your confidence up. And just spend time thinking it through. You know, if you want to write a blog, spend time planning it first. Really think it through about, you know, your about page. You might have different categories that you write about, any themes that you want to cover. Give yourself some wiggle room as well, because as you find, your focus will change as your confidence grows and your experience grows as well. So don't set a rigid plan, I'm definitely going to do this. Just say to yourself, what does my voice want to do? My message is this. I want people to feel loved. Okay, so we can do lots around this actually. This looks like all sorts of different ways. And just remember, the more that you do it, the more confident that you become. And it just starts just one step. So there's another number of resources that I have loads actually. I had to pick 4 because I didn't want to be like, I'm going to sell. But quite literally, you can just find me online and you'll see for yourself. But I've got create content that connects. So when you join my mailing list, this is a free download that you get. So it's all about creating content, perfect for bloggers or anybody who wants to build a social media presence. I've got Blogging Brilliance, which is an ebook that I've got on my website, and it's all about, if you wanted to start your blog, it really gets you thinking about your message ultimately. But I think it's actually quite useful for other things as well. I've got my last book, not the new book, the last book that I did called Watch Your Story, and that's really for people who are interested in getting their voice, their story out. You know, if you feel like you want to write about your story but you've just never done it and you're not sure yet if there's value in it, you'd use that. There's writing exercises in there as well. That's on Amazon. They've also got some awesome cards. They really are awesome, and they're really for people who are building a brand, whether it's, you know, your job at work or you're a blogger or you're a business owner. And they're really cute little cards with they'll have a focus and some questions that will ask you questions and some ideas on how you can communicate it. So the focus could be creativity. There'll be some prompts there, and it might say communicate this with a poll or feedback, testimonials, stuff like that. It's about connecting with your audience. And I designed them, so I'm very proud. And yeah, this is our question time. We can stay in touch. So here's all the ways you can get in touch with me, but quite literally, if you didn't write it down, you can literally just type me in to Google or to Instagram. Oh, you'll find me. It's shocking. But yeah, please do get in touch if you need to. And I think we've got time for questions.